And let's get ready to rumble. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities Podcast. My name's Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group, and is Sanity returning to the energy space? We have got an absolutely action-packed podcast for you. Live from the UK, we have Tammy Nemeth, the founder of the Nemeth Report. How are you today, Tammy?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you doing, Stu?
Oh, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And then we have from Bulgaria, working on her garden. How are you, Irina Slav?
I'm busy, Stu, but in a good way. So everything is great.
I'll tell you, I always say this, your Substack is one of the highlights of my day when I get to listen to you in my inbox. So everybody needs to go to irinaslav.substack.com and subscribe to her worldwide industry humor.
Thank you.
All right. Then we have David Blackmon. And I mean, David Blackmon is not only a legend in my mind, he's a legend in his own mind. He is an author. He's a contributing author for the Forbes. He's for the Telegraph, Daily Caller. He's on 2 or 3 other podcasts. The man never sleeps. He has a tapeworm. And it is so great to see you this morning, David. How are you?
It's not a tapeworm. It's just a function of age, too. Well, we won't talk about that.
I tell you what, the Monday mornings are some of my most precious highlights because we get ready for the week. And the topic for today is energy sanity returning to the energy space. We are seeing a lot of stories that are coming out. I want to go ahead and tee this first story up. There's no sound to it, but as this is playing, I want you guys to go ahead and give us your thoughts on this. This is 2 dogs that actually start a fire off of a charger. And you guys were laughing about this on the email prep trail. So here we go. Here we have.
I love these dogs.
And when
It actually looks like a phone, not a charger. But yeah.
It was a cord, yeah.
A cord, yes.
But it's
so he's sitting there going, all right, do I get marshmallows? Do I where and the other guy's going, hang on, let me run it. Now, fortunately, you all had in there that the no dogs were hurt. They ran out the dog door, and so there is a good reason to have a dog
door.
But
they just ran out. They didn't wake their people up who were sleeping in the adjacent bedroom, but they escaped too. Everybody escaped.
You're saying those are liberal dogs then?
I don't know.
Self-serving liberal dogs.
But they're -1 mattress if this is a mattress.
Yes. Yeah.
That's funny. That is a hoot. Now, Tammy, why would we have some of these thought processes that we're seeing hope that sanity is coming back into the energy space?
Well, I feel like it's part of the contradiction of the energy transition as it's currently being articulated, because the companies are saying one thing in their reports, in their sustainability reports, in their transition planning and so on. But then their actions are doing something else that, like, for example, the Glencore story, where Glencore was going to break off their coal operations spin it off into a separate company. But then they surveyed their shareholders, and the shareholders are like, no, let's keep it. And we're going to increase our production of coal, but we're also going to reduce emissions and all these other things. And so there's the statements, and then there's the actions. And I would hope that what's happening with Glencore, and some of the other things, like Shell is doing more with oil and gas, and BP is supposedly doing more with oil and gas and whatnot, is that it's these first pebbles in an avalanche. And I'm hoping that it does create a bit of a cascade effect in order to have more reality set in. But I get concerned, though, that people point to these things and like, whoa, see the transition, it's done. They're not going to do net zero and everything else. Well, someone should tell the policymakers, because they're still doubling down on all of these ridiculous regulations and stuff. And all I can do is hope that this is the beginning of something that will have some teeth and stop the net zero madness that will really destroy how people, their quality of life and standard of living.
Well, Irina, what were you thinking on that?
Well, I agree with Tammy that we're seeing the beginning of a reversal, shall we say, of of actions. They will keep talking about net zero. They will keep companies, that is, they will keep talking about how they will be cutting emissions and whatever. But the actions that, as we know, speak louder than words, are very different. BP and Shell, which Tammy mentioned, just dropped to biofuel projects in Europe because biofuels are not, they're not selling. Because the thing about reality is that it doesn't care about what you want. It doesn't care about wishful thinking. It doesn't care about ambitions. It doesn't care about fantasies, which is why we just saw a 37% drop in EV sales in Germany, because Germany stopped subsidizing EVs because it can't continue affording to subsidize them.
Wow.
This is why we see a slowdown in solar in California, because California is broke. Is it already? And it can no longer subsidize all the solar it wants, its politicians want to have built. So without subsidies, solar is slowing down. And we had one major bankruptcy in California in solar power because of that. So reality is striking back. Who could have seen it coming?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
reality
and y'all are
is striking back. I like that.
Yep. It's and it's true. I mean, and that's exactly right. Both of you are exactly right. I mean, we have seen this trend among the big companies. Really, it started at the CIRA conference in Houston in March of last year of 2023. We noticed that pretty much every speaker from one of the big oil companies was up there talking about how they are going to rejigger their budgets to focus more on their core business of producing and refining and selling oil and gas, and less on, buying wind farms and all this stuff that's not profitable for them, that they don't have the staff expertise to really execute. And then the Glencore announcement was really big last week, and it just kind of, that shareholder feedback, according to Glencore's senior management, 95% of the shareholders told them, no, don't spin off the coal business. That's your core business. You shouldn't be doing that. And so but at the same time, as Tammy says, the policymakers are still doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on failure. And we talk about the solar industry in California. We've had dozens of bankruptcies now in the solar business this year in the United States. Dozens of bankruptcies in EV companies and battery companies, not just in the US, but all across Europe. I mean, and all this IRA money, the subsidy money, is going to all these startup businesses, and most of them, frankly, are either gone bankrupt already or will be going bankrupt because they're not sustainable business models. And they certainly are not in any way sustainable without the subsidies. And as you see, the United States now, we're going to add $2 trillion to our national debt. It's going to be $36 trillion by the end of this year. The United States is verging on national bankruptcy. Okay. We can't afford to do a new IRA every year from now on, which even the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, admits would be required to meet these targets, these insane targets that the Biden administration has put in place. And
Janet Yellen needs to use my barber. just save us from her.
Well, yeah, she needs to put down the bowl and scissors and go to an
Oh my
actual
gosh.
hairstylist. But anyway, the point being that the subsidies aren't sustainable, and thus the renewables aren't sustainable, and thus the EV companies are not sustainable. And so we're again, as we've talked about many times on this podcast before, we're headed towards a major energy crisis and debt crisis across the Western world in the next few years, and it's frankly probably past the point of being avoidable.
Let me ask this, Tammy. The Drax power station was responsible for more carbon emissions than the UK's last remaining coal-fired power plant.
Yep.
And that power plant uses wood chips they import from the US, and it was subsidized. You can't buy this kind of entertainment. I mean, this is hilarious. It was they received $22 billion in subsidies. Wow.
I would like to know how they're making those calculations for the emissions, though, because there's a group of environmentalists that hate the Drax plant, and they are desperate to get it shut down. And quite often their methodologies for making these calculations are somewhat suspect. But in any event, the rationale is that trees are renewable. We need to plant more trees. We'll fund planting more trees.
Oh,
And, in some ways, I hate to justify some of that, is that in the wood process, sometimes there's wood chips and whatnot that are left over that you can't really make use of, and they compress them into pellets that you can then burn, which is great. But unfortunately, in some instances, they're taking whole trees and turning them into pellets and doing this terrible stuff. Now, if the trees are like the ones that have been destroyed by pine beetles, which is what's causing a lot of the forest fires in Western Canada, and you can harvest those and turn them into pellets, great. That makes a lot of sense. But for other wood, I don't know. I think there needs to be a little more caution in doing that kind of thing. But I'm all for using, if you have this material that you can't do anything else with, why not?
Why not? Exactly.
Tammy, you nailed it with that comment on the forest management, because we were having so many wildfires because we're not managing the forest, because the Sierra Club says you can't manage the forest. And if you burned it and used it for energy, that makes sense to me. This is from Colin Megson. If you have new data, would you please consider talking about the copper crunch, which is IMO, which will cause wind, solar batteries, EV charging to start wither on the vine by 2030?
We should definitely do a podcast about copper.
Yeah, we should do a whole episode about it, because
great idea.
Yeah, it is a big limiter to everything, and there's no way we're going to increase copper production by the magnitude it needs to be increased by 2030 to even approach any of these goals.
Yeah.
And again, it's a bottleneck of policy, right? Because maybe there's lots of deposits out there in the West that you would like to access, but what is the lead time in getting a mine built? In the United States and Canada, my understanding in North America is 15 to 20 years.
Yes, 15
to get
20
a mine.
years.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And then
it's worse in Europe, by the way. It's worse in Europe than it is in the United States.
Well, and again, I think, that'll be a good conversation we can have in a couple
The one that gets me all worked up is the seabed mining. We don't know enough about trying to get oxygen out or seabed mining, deep critical minerals out of deep sea mining. And we don't know the ecological structure of how much oxygen is actually being created out of the bottom. I didn't know half of this stuff as I'm trying to research and get into this. We don't know a lot of the stuff about the ocean, and we should not be destroying the ocean trying to get the critical minerals either. So this is...
we know more about Jupiter than we know about the bottom of the oceans.
Yeah, but they've banned it for now.
Yes, and they should.
They should.
In some areas, has China followed it?
It's kind of like the whales. If it meets the direction of the political people. I live within 20 miles of Drax and wonder how much PM 2.5 I enjoy every day.
I don't know. I mean, they have good scrubbers, you know, but it doesn't
Yeah,
get
they
all
do
of
have
it.
good scrubbers.
Doesn't get all of
So-
it. That's real pollution, by the way, not carbon dioxide.
Yeah, it is. But I
Yeah,
wanted
but they're
to.
now.
Yeah,
No, go ahead,
go.
Irene.
No, you did.
I was
Somebody
just
go.
going to say that they're going after ultrafine particles now. So 2.5 is too big, and now they need to go after ultrafine particles.
Yeah.
No
Ultrafine particles.
behind.
Let me ask this. If they're going after ultrafine particles, how come the tires off of electric vehicles cause more damage from microfine particles from the tires and pollution than regular cars?
Because it's different. Please, guys, remember this is different.
It's
That-
different
We have a
until you get
legalized
rid of all
double
vehicles.
standard.
Doesn't fit the narrative? Is that what I heard? David, I have to give a shout out to you because you have found a way as a creative individual to
Why
find
do I
a better
feel a
way
bad video coming up?
to find a parking spot. And when your truck can identify as a Prius, this is now available at David Blackmon Substack. And here we go. So here is David going to a charging station to get a better parking station here. And let me add this.
There we go.
Let me back it up here.
You got to
Sorry,
back
folks.
it up. You got to show the start. Look
Boom.
at that. Is this genius or what?
You
I wish I
add
could
a
take credit for
sticker.
it, actually.
That way you can go identify
just
your
pretend.
truck as a. I'm sorry, David. That was
It's the latest version of stealing a handicap hanger for your mirror to park in handicap
This is
parking.
just
Right?
wonderful.
Because all the good spaces for the EV chargers now at Whole Foods.
And-
Oh, we have an EV charging station in the nearby mall. I have never ever seen a car there. No, actually, one day.
You did
but
see one?
It was a petrol car. It was just parked there for a while. I've never seen cars charged there. I don't go there every day.
Yeah.
Of course, but I wanted to go back to something David mentioned about the IRA money. Did you know that the Financial Times just did an investigation of IRA projects? Do you know how many of these projects have been delayed or paused indefinitely?
Oh, dozens.
40%.
Yeah,
40%.
Yeah,
40%, including $1 billion solar panel project by Italy's Eni or something, Enel, something. A battery factory project that's worth 1.3 billion, and another $1 billion project.
Yeah.
And they're doing it because they cannot be sure that they'll still have the subsidies after the November elections. They're doing it because of the slowdown in demand. Can you imagine this?
Gosh, so hard to imagine.
That's 40%.
It's worse than that, Irina. What that story did not cover is the fact that in the Inflation Reduction Act, or as Dan Bongino in the U.S. calls it, the Porculus Bill, it actually has language and funding for federal agencies to register people to vote. And it is highly a voter fraud machine. So not only is the Porculus Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, used for fraud, like we had, I believe it was over $7.5 billion and only 60 electric buses. We had another $8 billion and only 7 charging stations put out.
8. Get it right.
8.
But 3 of them don't work.
Okay.
Really 5. But anyway.
I went to Oklahoma State and they don't teach you how to add. So, work with me here. So you look at the fraud that is in the Inflation Reduction Act. It is disgusting and abysmal. Sorry. Did I say all that?
Yeah, and so back to the 40% bankruptcies, it's going to end up being substantially more than
It's
that.
delays. It's not
Right.
bankruptcy.
Right. I'm sorry,
Not yet.
delays or cancellations or yeah. It's going to end up being substantially higher than that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're
totally.
just getting started on the IRA. And it is driving a lot of investment and a lot of successful projects too. But at the end of the day, only a handful of these projects that it's funding are going to be sustainable over a long term without additional subsidies. The thing about these renewables and the EV battery makers and all these companies that are being funded with this money is they always come back for more subsidies because their business models are not sustainable, particularly now, now in the EV sector, now that demand has stopped growing essentially and may even start falling in the years to come. It's going to be just carnage in that sector of the economy, and that's going to drive a lot of unemployment and a lot of just a lot of bad business decisions. But and the other side of that, and we back to the energy sanity for a minute. The other aspect that I wanted to be sure to mention here is U.S. automakers kind of being forced to return to sanity. The legacy automakers like Ford, GM, and Stellantis, who went in whole hog with Joe Biden and the green agenda in 2021 when they were moving that bill and trying to get it passed. And so they wanted to be sure they were going to get their big piece of the pie of federal money that was going to be allocated. So they went in whole hog, fully endorsed it, funded a lot of Democratic politicians during the midterm elections with campaign contributions. And now what are they doing? Well, I mean, Ford had only lost $51,000 per EV
Only.
delivered in the second quarter, which was the best performance its EV division has had in more than a year.
Woohoo!
And so Ford is delaying. You talk about delaying. They're delaying a lot of investments, opening of new plants. They're converting. They've canceled the introduction of several new battery electric models in favor of hybrids. And so they're going more to a Toyota style model focused on hybrids than electric vehicles. And Ford is very transparent about what they're doing. GM is not transparent about its losses in its EV division. So we don't really know the magnitude of what GM is losing. And we can only look at and observe at the same similar steps they're taking to delay or cancel new investments in their EV stuff. And it's just, but that's reality, the market forcing reality to set back in those legacy auto companies.
In doubling down on things, the Biden administration on July 22nd announced it's dispersing $4.3 billion in taxpayer fund grants through the EPA, and these grants are all being issued before. So the projects are just unbelievable.
Yeah,
what
they're
these
trying to
things are going
force
for.
as much of that money out before the election as they can. There was another one last week, $2.2 billion by the Energy Department to fund, which is good actually, because I mean the purpose of it is to fund upgrading and hardening of transmission grids in 17 different states. So I mean that, when you talk about
Were
money
they
to do
Democrat
that,
states or were
that's
they
actually an
Republican
intelligent.
states?
They were almost all Democrat states because, again, it was just another gift to their supporters before the election, which is what this administration has done for 4 years now.
Let's roll over. Tammy is missing in action here, so let's go over to Irina. You had two fantastic stories.
Yeah, I already mentioned Germany's EV sales.
Man,
So essentially, as they
37%.
remove the subsidies, nobody wants to buy an EV anymore. Even
Yeah.
green Germans, and Germans are very green because they have been brainwashed into being very green for decades. So, as we have argued repeatedly for years, all of us here, is that EVs cannot make it on their own. And
Yeah.
now it's not just Germany, by the way. Other big EV markets in Europe are experiencing the same, because, as one report put it, they've tapped out the EV fans, the people who are affluent enough to buy an EV. It's just not going to become a mass mode of transportation.
No, and it's just a continuation of 140 years of futility since the EV model was first invented. You know, I mean,
It's just
this
not
is
going to
not the
happen.
first time this has been tried.
Yeah, and then the second story is really good, because I browsed a story again in the FT book review section or something, and one of the books reviewed was on climate change and net zero, and how we're going to make it to net zero using, guess what, wind, solar, EVs, heat pumps, and green hydrogen, because all of these technologies would develop in accordance to Wright's law. They're going to get cheaper the more of them we build. They keep repeating this, guys, even though we are seeing it fail in real time. So Skavonik, I hope I'm pronouncing his surname right, he did an opinion column for the West Australian, the West
West
Australian,
Australian, yeah.
debunking the green hydrogen hype, which is in the process of debunking itself. You probably remember Andrew Forrest of Fortescue Metals. He was a great fan of green hydrogen. He pledged billions in investments in green hydrogen, basically jump-starting Australia's green hydrogen industry. Now he's going back on this in the latest sign, yet another sign that Sanity is returning forcefully. I mean, I think this guy really believed he could make green hydrogen work. I have no idea how a business executive of this scale could actually believe this, but apparently he did. And now he's reconsidering his plans.
So I think there are isolated instances where you can do green hydrogen at some scale. And that's mainly in parts of the world where hydropower is abundant, right?
You need a lot of water, and you need it to be cheap, and you need a lot of sun or wind, preferably sun, to make it work. But David, even in these instances, you have a process where the input of energy is greater than the output of hydrogen.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes no sense. Significantly greater.
Irina, I got really
hydrogen.
I got really tickled yesterday at a group that was suing the hydrogen corridor. I have to find the article again because they're tired of it being called a Hindenburg. And they're saying, quit using the word Hindenburg. And they're actually suing over it because of the hydrogen corridor. And I got tickled. I was like, oh, Irina's got to see that. The Hindenburg corridor.
This is actually wonderful. Yes, do send me a link or something. Whatever you have.
It was actually hilarious. I was like, this is Irina Slav worthy of an article, calling it the Hindenburg corridor as opposed to.
Yeah, it's been a while since I trashed green hydrogen.
That is absolutely a great
thing. Hey, we got Tammy back.
Yay, Tammy.
Sorry. I'm on my iPad. Microsoft decided it wants me to upgrade my operating system.
Of course it would.
Yeah.
Well, you look great. You sound great. So your two stories are some good ones. Paper straws and here's how to prepare for net zero. Buy a generator.
Yeah, Matt Ridley. He's priceless. I love his writing, and he really nailed it. I mean, what's coming in the UK? I'm grateful we have 2 generators just in case. So yeah, I mean, it's what they're planning to do will destabilize the system even more. And yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant article. I totally recommend people taking a look at it. And then the story about paper straws I thought was hilarious because they went and did about 8 or 9 different types of straws, including stainless steel. And in the end, they said everything's toxic except stainless steel. So buy a stainless steel straw and take it around with you.
Well, where is that paper straw story? Where was that published? I need to find that. That's just
I don't
awesome.
know. You'll have to take a look at the link. Because I can't recall at the top of my head. But yeah, so they detail the different ways that they did the sampling, and I guess it depends on, you know, what you think about different chemicals embedded in plastic and so on. But yeah, I mean, what binds the paper together, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it doesn't work either, because within about 2 minutes of starting to use any paper straw, they become soggy and almost unusable.
But it's
Yeah,
the
it's
chemicals
disgusting.
that they put in them to make them not absorb water that I don't want in my body.
And there's no telling what that is.
I have to ask, however, I have not used any straw in decades. Who uses paper straws? Any straw, sorry.
I
If
don't.
you're ordering a milkshake or something like that, or you're going to a fast food restaurant and stuff, and I think it's hilarious that they're like, oh, well, you should just carry it around with you. So if let's say you're doing a massive road trip across North America, which is what we often do, you're stopping at these fast food places, and if you want to drink, if it's not a bottle of water, it's, you know, in a cup and you can in the car, you know. Yeah, so if you're in the car and you want to drink from your cup instead of using the straw, good luck. It's ending up all over your seats.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I want to ask a question because this one grossed me out. I actually managed restaurants, believe it or not. And I actually worked in McDonald's, and I will not drink lemon in my tea because there's more E. coli and bad things when people put the waiters cut the lemon and put it in your thing. Don't drink the lemon in the water.
Nah.
Sorry.
Ugh.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt with the stories, but I wanted to I'm sorry I missed the rest of the conversation, but I wanted to just draw attention to the idea of policymakers doubling down or tripling down. And it was a recent statement made by, I think it was the Bureau of Land Management in the United States, to curtail the coal production on federal lands in North Dakota, and to sort of limit and the way it is in North Dakota, the lands are quite intermixed apparently. David and Stu, you guys probably know more about that than I do. And so it makes it very difficult and problematic if the federal lands are like, oh, you can't access that, and you can't do this, you can't do this beside it, but they're all kind of intermixed. So I think North Dakota is one of the largest coal producers in America.
Yeah.
So this is like a big statement and decision that isn't getting as much attention as it should.
It probably should get more. Yeah, that intermingling of land types goes back to the days when we built the transcontinental railroads, and Burlington Northern was one of them on the northern tier of states. And in exchange for building that railroad that went from, I believe, Chicago to Seattle, Burlington Northern Railroad was awarded every other section of land, like a checkerboard. And so every other section is privately owned, and the others are owned by the federal government. So a section is what, a square mile, I guess, is a section?
Yep.
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah. And so you have this all across North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, and Washington State, all the way across that tier, and Minnesota too. So, and so that's what that goes back to. So if you're going to outlaw it on federal lands, well, a lot of those coal mining operations are also on private lands. And so how are you going to manage that? But this is just typical of the kind of insane decision-making that's being made in this government that doesn't get much attention because, I mean, for instance, I just don't have the capacity to write or even talk about all the insane stuff they're doing. And they know that. I mean, that's part of the strategy. They know that it's virtually impossible for anyone in the media to keep up with all of it.
On the same topic, David, let me ask this, because the Chevron deference is so important. that we see that the last week, I believe it was the Biden administration, Biden-Harris administration again filed to appeal the repeal on the LNG ban. And now we have it back in. They're now appealing that. So they're doubling down on stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing about our system is they're going to be able to delay all that, any final decision on that in the courts until next year at least, because of how slow the courts move. And that's, again, part of what they rely on in all of this is their ability to delay justice. So the Chevron deference is vitally important, but that's why I keep saying it's going to take years before we see real results from that incredibly important Supreme Court decision.
Well, Tammy, I loved your stories and
thanks.
How to prepare for net zero. Net zero is
same
not
thing we're
gonna
doing
happen.
in Texas, by the way, the generators. Yeah.
Do what now, David?
It's the same thing same way we prepare in Texas for the ERCOT grid's instability by buying a generator.
And a water reservoir.
Yeah.
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 Need your own well.
Yep.
I'm working on mine. So
I'm working on that too.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's go to David. Coming around the corner. You got some good ones here. I loved your charger hog.
Yeah, the charger hog story is hilarious. I mean, it's just another of 1,000 problems with buying an electric vehicle. So people are finding in parts of the world where sales of electric vehicles have been pretty heavy, California and a few other places. They're running into the problem now where people are staying at the chargers too long. Yeah, I mean, it takes you 15, 20 minutes to charge a car up to 70 or 80% battery capacity, which is what these high-speed chargers are designed to do, right? But what's happening is many people want to get 100% charge on their battery because they don't
one of those people, by the way.
Right. But they don't understand, they don't take the time to, because when you buy a Tesla or another EV, you have to spend days doing research and reading through a manual that thick to understand all the ins and outs of actually operating a damn car that's more complex than everything in your house is. And so this is one of those deals where people are pulling up these chargers. They ought to be taking 15, 20 minutes to get a 70 to 80% charge. But instead, they're sitting there for an hour or more trying to get the thing up to 100%. That's not what the chargers are designed to do. And so, you have long lines forming at the charging stations in these areas and people waiting for hours on end to finally get up to a charger and charge their car. So that one's pretty funny. And then what was the other one? Exxon's results. Exxon, again, despite lower prices in the second quarter, had incredibly strong financial results for the second quarter. Unlike some of its competitors, like Chevron, had a pretty disappointing second quarter. BP and Shell, while had better second quarters than year over year, still are trailing well behind ExxonMobil. It just shows that, ExxonMobil has really hit a sweet spot in its operations and profitability, and is really among the majors, the strongest financially performing company really in the world. That's, an actual corporation. Although I guess Saudi Aramco is partially now privately held corporation. So I have a hard time comparing any of these companies to Saudi Aramco, though, because it's so much more gigantic than they are. But anyway, Exxon had a great second quarter.
And it wasn't the second. Most of them had a great, very strong quarter.
Yeah. Chevron had some difficulties with write-downs and stuff, and it had pretty disappointing results. But that's not a ongoing thing.
I love the fact Chevron is rolling to Texas, but please, all Chevron employees, please listen to me now. Think about it later and vote not like a Californian, but vote like a Texan. You are now moving to Texas. Leave your voting policies behind. Thank you. That was my best Trump imitation too. So that was terrible. The Cheniere ships 3,570 LNG cargoes. Expanding their plant is progressing, but this goes along with the same topic of the Chevron deference, and that is they're expanding, and they are smart to do that. I have to admit that they're doing great on that. So hats off to Cheniere in hitting their 3,500.
And what a titan Cheniere is in that LNG business. They're just incredible. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, great management. Love what they're doing there.
And they're not even pissing off big oil, unlike Venture.
I'm sorry, say that again.
They're not even pissing off big oil. They're big oil clients, unlike Venture Global.
Yeah.
Good management and good numbers usually it usually adds up together. I love this article. When you take a look, green schemes in Kamala's home state sent electricity prices higher into orbit, the highest in the lower 48. So when you take a look at the ticket for the Democrats, and Tim, who is an amazing individual as her VP pick, and then you have her, holy smokes, Batman. If you go left of Bernie Sanders and then keep going left to the, like Peter Pan to the moon, holy smokes, they're expensive. Green schemes are expensive.
They are indeed.
That's why we're supposed to spend $3 trillion a year or something.
Yeah. You know what the comparison is to is the highest rate is in San Diego. I think that's the highest electricity rate, and it's less than half the rate for electricity that is being paid by consumers in Germany. Think about that. As awful as it is in California, it's twice as bad in Germany.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the deindustrialization is happening in Germany, New York, and California. Right. Those are the three big deindustrialization going on in here. The other big one.
And the UK.
And the UK now. Yeah.
We can't talk about it, though.
No. and the KU.
They're going to extradite me.
No, yeah.
Were they serious when they said this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was the police commissioner. Yeah, in London.
I guarantee you, I would love to see a constable show up to a Texan's house and say, "We're here to take you to the UK."
Because you had a bad meme.
To see that. In fact, I will film it. Show up at my house, and I'll film it with my 37 security cameras. Please show up. It would be gold.
Well, you have to offend somebody first, Stu. They won't show up unless you offend somebody.
Okay. I offend people every day, Irina. Trust me. When you take a look at the other one, the side one on this green schemes, in 2024, the Biden administration churned out $1.2 trillion in regulations. It cost $1.2 trillion added more financial and administrative burden from regulatory activities, from totaling 1.69 trillion from inauguration day to August 2nd, 2024. That is amazing in the regulatory power of the pen.
Yes, as she's fond of saying, I have a pen and I have power.
And I love the way your head was snapping back and forth, Tammy, for our podcast listeners. You actually had that imitation down wonderfully. So, but sorry.
I wanted to add something. So we're talking about Germany and how expensive their electricity is, and how they've been deindustrializing, lowering energy usage, but lowering energy usage because your companies are moving away or shutting down or tooling down or whatever. And there was an article in the Canadian Globe and Mail the other day, it might have been yesterday, I can't remember, done by a pollster, Nick Nanos. And he was going on about how Canadians can learn positive things from the German transition how since the war in Ukraine, they've made advancements in emission reducing power generation and going on and on. I'm like, wow, this guy's clueless. And he's like one of Canada's leading pollsters. Because, I mean, what's our lesson? Open up more coal power, build more interconnects, and establish LNG power plants, but you put the qualifier that they're hydrogen ready. So that's
Hydrogen
okay.
ready, yes. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, HD ready televisions. Now we have hydrogen ready natural gas power plants.
And make
so
life more unaffordable for regular people.
Exactly. So that's the lesson. We're supposed to be following what Germany's doing. That's the last thing that Canada, the UK, or anybody should be doing.
Yeah.
Well, the United States in the regulatory, and David will be able to answer this better, but the way that they're getting the AI is impacting the grid is we need natural gas plants brought up as fast as we can. And the only way to get those through and approved right now is to be hydrogen ready. And that hydrogen ready means we're never going to run hydrogen because it's a whole different system.
It's never going to
it's hydrogen ready. So, Tammy, if anybody in the UK shows up at my house, I'll be wearing this hat. Okay. Just thought I'd let you know. And anybody understands what that hat is, it means that they usually train. So we'll just leave it at that. So,
hey, we have
I'm not
a
going to say
question down
anything.
here that actually ties into that last conversation of a big greener than green nuclear enabled hydrogen with substack posts. Any opinions on the subject? So
nuclear is good.
Yeah, nuclear is good. I mean,
we love nuclear.
Green. Yeah,
I love nuclear.
It makes sense.
In fact,
nuclear-enabled hydrogen, as long as you have all the water that you need. Nuclear is much better than solar or wind hydrogen. Yeah. It can produce it around the clock.
In the United States, guess how many nuclear power plants are currently being constructed in the United States? Zero.
3? What?
Zero.
I thought we had 3.
I thought there was 3.
No, not traditional nuclear. We have projects like the one at Abilene Christian.
Right.
That is a small modular nuclear test case, right? We have 3 of those happening.
Okay.
But currently we have 0 traditional nuclear power plants under development in the United States.
And yet I'm reading that big tech doing AI wants more nuclear power.
Yeah. I mean, it'll change, but it's just the regulatory structure is so slow moving and antiquated in the United States that it's incredibly difficult to get a project moving.
I want to make a plea, though, for security, because security in the sense of we just saw an attack on nuclear power plants that Russia controls by the Ukraine, and they had to shut it down because of the potential for, a meltdown. Like, what are you thinking? So I'm concerned that there's this talk of maybe having a hot war with China or, the world breaking into some kind of actual heated conflict. And if that's the case, then one of the first targets would be nuclear power plants.
Yep.
And so what?
Russia plant.
This is it, Tammy.
Aren't we supposed to be pretending that Russia attacked its own power plant? Isn't that the narrative?
I think so, because that's what Zelensky said. But I wanted to mention something. We always trust what Zelensky says, David.
Of course. Yeah.
But there's this nuclear guy, nuclear expert, Mark Nelson, and he's been writing about this Zaporozhye power plant a lot. And he's actually had a positive message that the actual reactors are really, really, really well protected. I don't think that's very big consolation given the kinds of weapons we have these days. Yeah. So I think your concern is very legitimate. But I think it will be harder to actually cause a reactor meltdown with the missile attack or anything than we think, or at least I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are made to last and to withstand such attacks, precisely because they would be a major target in a hot war.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
Russia's
something, I think.
Doesn't Russia control that one?
It does, yeah. It's controlled it since 2022, but it keeps attacking it because it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Russia attacked.
They're flying their own drones around.
Yeah, and Russia attacked the Nord Stream
They
pipeline.
attack themselves.
I mean, didn't Russia attack their own Nord Stream pipeline?
Well, of course, yes. Putin did that.
So
Putin does everything.
I thought it was funny when Putin said, "Why would I want to attack my own pipeline? I just walk down the hall and turn it off." I thought that was pretty funny. He's supposed to be addressing the world here shortly. He's pretty upset about a few things. So I'm very curious today what Putin's going to say. Then we have Iran, that is, now that the Olympics are over, Iran is supposed to be attacking Israel.
Wait, did they wait for the Olympics to end?
They did. And by the way, I did finally watch one Olympic event. And this Olympic event is absolutely what I think is going to be. This is how I would
Must
go
be
to
breakdancing.
This is me trying to train my dog to break dance.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This is me. Boom. Okay. Now that was me in my front yard.
Go, okay?
Okay, you got to watch this. Here you go. Pow! That would have been better to watch that than the breakdancing.
Ah, man. I never thought I would ever live to see anything more absurd than, what's it called? Synchronized swimming in the Olympics. But we did this time with the breakdancing competition.
Guys, I don't have a problem with breakdancing. Have you seen some of the breakdancers? They are phenomenal.
They're phenomenal athletes.
Lady that's all over social media.
I know.
Yeah, the Australian.
So insulting.
It's so embarrassing.
It is embarrassing, and it's. I mean, yeah, they're incredibly athletic. They really are. Cheerleaders are too. Cheerleaders,
I do that for
when they're
incredibly
good.
athletic, and they're really good. Yeah.
This was from Jeff. I just want to give him a shout out. Hey, Jeff, U.S. regulatory structure is slow and antiquated. It's dominated by staff that have limited technical ability. Yes, they all went to Oklahoma University. They're all from that horrible university. Did I just say that out loud on live?
You said that out loud.
Sorry about that, OU.
I have no comment.
It's a good thing you're not in the UK. You'd be taken to court for libel or something.
Well, then let me tell you who I'm actually voting for here. Might as well let everybody know. By the way, he is a nice guy. He's thinking about coming on the podcast, so we'll keep you posted.
Okay, good.
Hey,
But I mean, his ideas are so great. Kamala's adopting them. Did you see yesterday? She said she's going to remove tax on tips. I'm thinking, but you're in power right now.
He's going to end democracy, but we like his tax policy.
Yeah. Well, she has a pen. Can't she just do that right now? Why does she have to wait?
Right. Yeah. Why is she waiting?
She wants to be in full power.
Yeah. Well, she is in full power right now. Joe Biden's not running anything. Everyone. That's what's so funny about this charade. Anyway, this is.
Oh yeah. Okay. Better not go there.
Yeah. Here you go, Tammy. Let's see if this rolls in here.
Tips for service and hospitality workers.
Hospitality.
A few moments later.
Your earnings hostage. Now, the IRS, they just announced this week that they want to start tracking all of the tips that workers earn so that they can be taxed for it. So much for Biden's sacred promise not to raise taxes on anyone making less than
they're taxing them.
a year. Remember, this is all
not only a few moments. I mean,
the yeas are 50, the nays are 50.
She caused inflation. She owns this problem.
The vice president votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
Thank you, Joe Manchin.
Oh my goodness, this was bad. So thank you, Tammy, for bringing that up. I just happened to have that clip ready for this one. So can you believe it that she's now saying, and then they put it out that Trump meant no tax for tips because he wanted his rich buddies on Wall Street to tip each other rather than pay fees. That's not what he's been saying.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like,
really?
I mean, that's horrible. So, what do you guys see happening this week? Tammy, what do you see coming around the corner?
That's a good question. I'm just watching what, it's summer now and there's not too many people doing stuff in the policy space, at least in the UK and Canada. They're on holiday. But you never know. Keeping an eye open for whatever latest absurdity they trot out.
Well, Craig, hey, love you. Hey, so tax give to Harvard students. Oh, that's funny. And then we had in the UK, the thought of Trump being elected is frightening from the point of view of the worldwide political standpoint.
Yeah, because the world is so stable now, thanks to
Yeah, exactly.
like Farmer and Ursula von der Leyen. Yeah.
Irina, what do you see coming around the corner this week?
Not war and not nuclear war.
I hope not.
That's what I do not see. No, seriously. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Until someone overplays their hand.
Yeah.
But we'll sort out that. It's August. It's lazy time.
And David, you and I have another podcast with a author later today.
Larry Schweikert, yes, second episode in our new podcast on politics. Boy, everybody's going to love that. At 11 o'clock, we're live streaming with Larry.
In case anybody wants to know who I'm voting for, in 2020, I put my hat down because people were getting mugged and beat up for wearing a Trump hat. Well, guess what? Go ahead. Make my day. Try to beat me up.
Okay, Craig, I want to play this. I just want to ask Craig if he still thinks that after Stu's last comments.
Yeah.
Sensible people.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Do not forget to follow David Blackmon on blackmon.substack.com, Irina on irinaslav.substack.com, and Tammy Nemeth at thenemethreport.com. And I am on the Energy Newsbeat substack.com. So, hey, have a great day, guys. We will see you all next week. Stay safe.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.